"We've all decided, darling," my mother said with that chilling smile of hers. "You're not invited to dinner. Your brother's girlfriend doesn't like you." This was after I had invested $100,000 in their business. I replied understood. And canceled all payments, activating protocols I'd prepared for 15 years. They started calling me, but I'm Celeste Blackwood. I'm 33 years old, and my own mother looked me in the eye and uninvited me from a family dinner because my brother's girlfriend didn't like me. This was just hours after I had transferred them the final payment, $100,000 for their precious boutique. Before I tell you how I walked into that house and systematically dismantled their world with a single real estate portfolio, do me a favor and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always incredible to see how far these stories travel. Alright, let's get right into it. The doorbell chimed through my penthouse, a melodic, expensive sound that usually brought me peace. It was a Tuesday afternoon, nothing particularly significant about it. The city sprawled below my floor-to-ceiling windows, and the scent of imported jasmine tea lingered in the air. I had a board meeting in an hour, and I was just reviewing the quarterly reports from my real estate empire. I saw my mother's perfectly coiffed silhouette through the smart glass and smiled, a genuine, trusting smile. I figured she was coming to gush about the money. The transfer had cleared that morning, $100,000. I can still see the confirmation screen on my banking app, those 5 zeros glowing back at me. It was the final piece they needed for their dream boutique, an upscale gift shop in the trendiest part of downtown. "This is it, Celeste," my father had said on our call last week, his voice brimming with manufactured excitement. "This investment makes you a true partner in our family legacy. We'll celebrate properly on Friday night, a real family gathering." A true partner. Those words had stirred something deep in my chest. After 15 years of being the family's silent financier, the dependable daughter funding everyone's dreams, this felt different. This was acknowledgement. So when I opened the door, I was still smiling, expecting to hear something like the money came through. "You're the best daughter." But her expression was cold, calculated. She stepped inside without invitation, her voice honeyed with false sweetness. "We need to discuss Friday's dinner plans." That tone. I knew that tone. My smile faltered, but I maintained composure. "Of course. Everything ready for the celebration?" She turned to face me fully, and that's when I saw it, that particular smile she reserved for delivering devastating news with surgical precision. "We've all decided, darling," she said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy, "you're not invited to dinner. Your brother's girlfriend doesn't like you." The words hit like physical blows. I stared at her, processing the casual cruelty of her delivery. "All decided?" I repeated, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. "Yes, sweetie," she continued, that smile never wavering. "Sienna feels well, let's just say she finds your success a bit overwhelming. She thinks you lord your money over us? And Marcus agrees. We can't have tension at a family dinner, can we?" Sienna, my brother's girlfriend of barely 8 months, an aspiring influencer whose last name I couldn't even remember. Her comfort level had just become more important than my presence at my own family's table. After everything. After the check that cleared this morning. I felt something crystalline and dangerous forming in my chest. "Understood," I said, the word falling from my lips like a stone into still water. I watched my mother leave, her heels clicking triumphantly against my imported marble floors. I stood in my doorway, staring at the space she'd vacated, while something fundamental shifted inside me. 15 years of careful documentation, strategic planning, and quiet preparation, it all aligned into perfect, terrifying focus. This wasn't rage. This wasn't heartbreak. This was recognition. My gaze swept across my penthouse office and landed on a specific filing cabinet, mahogany, locked, rarely opened. Inside that cabinet was a folder I'd hoped never to use, filled with documents that would reshape everything. I walked over with purposeful steps, my fingers finding the key I kept hidden in my desk drawer. The lock turned with a soft click that sounded like destiny. I pulled out a thick portfolio, its leather binding embossed with Blackwood Holdings, master property documentation. I hadn't needed to reference it in years, every detail was burned into my memory. These weren't just papers, they were the architectural blueprints of a financial empire I'd built in the shadows while playing the role of dutiful daughter. I had constructed this fortress quietly, methodically, for exactly this moment. As I opened the portfolio, one document caught the afternoon light, a deed with my name as sole owner. The address made my blood sing with cold satisfaction. It was the building that housed their precious boutique. They had just declared war on the landlord. They had no idea that the woman they'd just dismissed owned not just their business space, but the ground beneath their feet. They had reminded me of the first rule of real estate: location is everything, and I controlled every location that mattered in their lives. The sun disappeared behind the skyline, casting long shadows across my penthouse. Usually my sanctuary, tonight it felt like a mausoleum. I didn't turn on the lights. I sank into my Italian leather chair, the property portfolio a stark reminder on my glass desk. The silence was deafening, the sound of 15 years of careful illusions finally cracking. Every piece of furniture seemed to whisper accusations. The custom-built entertainment center, I'd bought Marcus a smaller version last Christmas because his apartment looked so bare. The Persian rug beneath my feet, a housewarming gift for my parents when they moved to their current home. I had systematically elevated their lifestyle with my success, hoping my achievements would translate to acceptance. Now my own space felt like a museum of my misguided generosity. My mind dragged me back to a moment 15 years ago. I was 18, standing in this very building's lobby, though it was just concrete and steel then. I held an acceptance letter from MIT's architecture program. Full scholarship. My hands shook as I read it. I was going to design buildings. I was going to create skylines. I was going to build something lasting. I remember calling my parents, breathless with joy. My father's voice was warm, proud. For 3 perfect days, I was their golden daughter. Then came the family intervention. They cornered me in their kitchen. Theodore had Marcus's prep school brochures spread across the table like battle plans. "Celeste," my father began, his voice heavy with manufactured wisdom, "you're our architect. That talent isn't going anywhere. But Marcus needs this opportunity now. This school could change his entire trajectory. We just can't afford both." I remember my young voice, small and desperate, "But Dad, the scholarship expires. I can't defer it." "Family means sacrifice, sweetheart," Vivian interrupted, her voice syrup-sweet with manipulation. "You're the responsible one. Invest in the family now, and we'll invest in you later. That's a promise." Promise. I carried that lie for 15 years. I traded my blueprint dreams for a business degree, built my empire in real estate instead of art, and funded Marcus's failures while my own vision gathered dust. I'd made my first family investment at 18. I'd been paying compound interest ever since. The memory dissolved, leaving cold resolution in its place. I stood, joints protesting from tension. Time to collect on 15 years of promises. I moved to my desk and opened my laptop. The screen illuminated my face in the dark room. I navigated to my property management portal, fingers moving with surgical precision. The dashboard loaded, a sprawling network of holdings I'd built while playing dutiful daughter. For years, I'd maintained the illusion of separation. But tonight, I saw it all clearly, the intricate web of financial control I'd woven around my family's entire existence. First, Marcus's apartment lease. Rent paid monthly to Blackwood Holdings Property Management. He'd never bothered reading the paperwork. The memory was razor sharp, Marcus bragging to friends about his sweet deal on rent. If only he knew his sister was his landlord. I clicked into the lease management system. Termination notice, 30 days. Click. Confirm. I moved to the next item. My cursor hovered over the retail space lease for their boutique. My breathing slowed. This was the nuclear option. Once I clicked this, there was no going back. What if they discovered everything? What if this made me truly alone? Then my phone buzzed. A text from my cousin Daphne, the only family member who'd earned my genuine respect, saw Vivian's Instagram story about Friday's celebration dinner. "Can't wait to hear how it goes. Say hi to everyone for me." She assumed I'd be there. They'd erased me so completely, they hadn't even mentioned my absence to extended family. The casual erasure crystallized my resolve. They hadn't just excluded me, they'd edited me out of their story entirely. I turned back to the screen. My hand was granite steady now. I clicked the lease termination link. A dialog box appeared. Are you sure you want to terminate this commercial lease? I whispered into the darkness. I've been sure for 15 years. Click. Confirm. The system generated an automated notice, lease terminated in 30 days. Power coursed through me, cold and precise. I continued down the list. Theodore's car lease, financed through my credit line. Terminated. Vivian's credit cards, all guaranteed by my accounts. Cancelled. The family cell phone plan, the utility guarantees, even the country club membership I'd gifted them last year. Click. Cancel. Confirm. Each termination felt like removing life support from a dying relationship. I wasn't destroying them, I was simply stepping back and letting natural consequences take their course. The final item made me pause, the mortgage on their house. It wasn't in my name, but I'd been making the payments for 3 years during Theodore's career transition. I scrolled to the payment history. 47 payments of $3,200 each. Over $150,000 of my money holding up their roof. I canceled the automatic transfer. No more mortgage payments from Celeste Blackwood. As I closed the laptop, my reflection stared back from the black screen. I looked different somehow, sharper, more defined. I reached for my phone and typed a response to Daphne. Plans changed. I'm having a much more productive evening than expected. Tomorrow would bring panic calls and desperate pleading. But tonight belonged to me. I glanced at the property portfolio on my desk and smiled. The real storm wasn't heading toward me, I was about to become the storm that reshaped their entire world. The first crack of thunder came at 9:15 a.m. I was sipping my morning espresso, watching the city wake up below, feeling an otherworldly calm when my phone erupted. Marcus's panicked face filled the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering, putting it on speaker and setting it on my marble countertop. Celeste, what the hell is happening? No greeting. His voice cracked with panic. Good morning, Marcus, I said, my tone glacial. Don't mess with me. My landlord just called screaming about declined rent. He's threatening eviction. $100 late fee. His voice climbed toward hysteria. That does sound problematic, I observed, taking a measured sip of espresso. Silence. I could practically hear his brain struggling to process my indifference. What do you mean problematic? Did you forget? Is your account frozen? His mind couldn't fathom any explanation beyond my failure. No, Marcus. I didn't forget. My accounts are perfectly healthy. Then what? His voice cracked between confusion and dawning terror. You just stopped? On purpose? Precisely. Why? The word tore from his throat. My rent, Celeste. My insurance. Everything comes out of my account, which will be empty. What am I supposed to do? That sounds like a personal responsibility issue, I said, voice smooth as silk. I'm sure there are resources available. It's no longer my concern. No longer your concern? You've handled everything for 10 years. You always fix it. His entitlement was so deeply rooted he couldn't hear his own words. And that was my error, I said. But intelligent people learn from mistakes. I've been enabling your irresponsibility. Consider this educational. I heard Sienna's sharp whisper in the background. What's she saying? Is she having a breakdown? Ask her what's wrong with her. Marcus's voice returned, shifting from panic to righteous fury. This is about dinner, isn't it? Grow up, Celeste. It wasn't personal. Sienna was just overwhelmed and wanted intimacy. You're destroying our lives over something so trivial? Trivial, he called it. That word crystallized everything. Goodbye, Marcus, I said, ending the call and blocking his number instantly. One down. An hour later, Theodore called. His voice carried that authoritative edge he used on disobedient students. Celeste, I spoke with your brother. Explain this behavior. Nothing to explain, Theodore. I've restructured my personal expenses. Your expenses? He scoffed. Don't be absurd. Your mother's card was declined at the market. Full cart of groceries. She abandoned it there. Do you comprehend how mortifying that was? She has her own debit card, I replied coolly. An account that's empty because everything's invested in the boutique. He thundered. An investment you're partnered in. The lease payment is due in 3 days. You'll handle it as promised. The partnership is exactly what I want to discuss, I said quietly. There's nothing to discuss. You're a daughter. You have obligations. I taught you to ride a bike. I helped with homework. I provided for you for 18 years. This is how you repay that? By humiliating your mother over groceries? I see it differently, I said, my composure cracking slightly. 15 years of funding everything. 15 years of sacrificing my dreams. 15 years of being treated like an ATM, not a daughter. What about your obligations? Did those expire when I turned 18? Long, tense silence. You're playing with fire, daughter, he said, voice dropping to a threatening whisper. And you will get burned. He hung up. The call I'd been expecting came that afternoon, Vivian. Already weeping when I answered. Celeste, darling, please. What's happening? She sobbed. Theodore's pacing like a caged animal. Marcus called, he's hysterical. You must stop this. Whatever we did, we're sorry. Please, make it stop. Stop what, Vivian? I asked, my heart clenching despite everything. This was her gift, sounding so broken that I'd move mountains to heal her. I'm not starting anything. I'm simply stopping. But why? She wailed. We're family. Family helps each other. My mind flashed to 3 months ago. Their dinner party with friends. I was sharing news about a major development deal I'd closed, a career milestone. Sienna listened with that calculating smile before cutting me off mid-sentence. Wow, Celeste, she'd said, voice dripping false sweetness, loud enough for everyone, it must be amazing being so successful. Just writing checks for whatever anyone needs. The table fell silent. The implication was clear, my achievements were just family resources. I'd felt my face burn with humiliation. That's not what success means, Sienna, I'd said through clenched teeth. Vivian immediately rushed to comfort Sienna, patting her arm. Oh sweetie, ignore Celeste, she'd said audibly. She gets so serious about work. Then to me, disapproval radiating, Celeste, really? She was complimenting you. Don't be so defensive. She'd chosen a stranger over her daughter publicly, invalidating my feelings to protect Sienna's comfort. Her tearful voice now dragged me back to the present. You're destroying this family. Over a misunderstanding? Was it a misunderstanding? I asked, voice dangerously soft. When you all decided I shouldn't attend dinner, whose idea was it? She hesitated. It was collective. We wanted to avoid tension. Whose idea was it? I pressed, each word a blade. Her voice shifted, tears replaced by defensive venom that revealed everything. Fine. It was Sienna. She thinks you're controlling. She said you manipulate us with money. She predicted you'd do exactly this, try to destroy us out of spite. And she was right. You proved her absolutely right. The final confirmation. They hadn't just reacted, they'd been programmed to expect my response. Sienna hadn't just excluded me, she'd written the script for my downfall, and my own mother had cast me as the villain. Strange, arctic peace settled over me. The pain remained, but distant now, like light from a dead star finally reaching Earth. Thank you, Vivian, I said, voice completely empty. You've clarified everything beautifully. I hung up before she could respond. An hour later, Theodore called again. No longer angry, now commanding. Family meeting Friday night. Your Aunt Carol and Uncle Mike will attend. You will be there. We're ending this foolishness permanently. Certainly, I said, the word tasting like power. I'll be there. I have several things to end as well. I hung up and looked at the property portfolio on my desk. My heart was stone, but my mind was diamond-sharp clarity. The intervention was coming, and I was more than ready. The 2 days before Friday were eerily quiet. My phone, usually buzzing with family demands, went silent. It was the ominous calm before a storm, predators coordinating their attack. I knew they were strategizing with Aunt Carol as their general. They were crafting guilt trips, sharpening emotional weapons, building a cage of family obligation to trap me Friday night. They had no idea I was forging the key to their destruction. Thursday afternoon, I entered the polished offices of Harris & Vail. Vail was old-school elegance, Steel gray hair, impeccable suit, office radiating quiet power. He'd been my personal attorney for 5 years, ever since I'd outgrown family lawyers. When I called about reviewing property agreements, his assistant had cleared his entire afternoon. He greeted me with a knowing handshake. Celeste, when you mentioned family legal matters, I suspected this wasn't a social call. I settled into the leather chair facing his executive desk. I placed my property portfolio before him. Harrison, I need to understand my exact legal position. No gray areas. I need to know what power I actually hold. He opened the portfolio, fingers moving with practiced precision to key documents. As my attorney, he'd structured most of these deals personally. Ah, he said, understanding immediately. The family reckoning has arrived. Finally, I admitted. I just need clarity on what I can legally do. Everything, he said simply. Celeste, you own the building housing their boutique. You hold the master lease. You're the guarantor on their residential lease. You control their business location, their home, their entire foundation. He leaned forward, expression intent. In my 20 years practicing corporate law, I've rarely seen such comprehensive leverage. You're not just a landlord, you're their entire economic ecosystem. The implications crystallized. I wasn't just financially supporting them, I owned the ground they stood on. The boutique lease specifically? I asked. 30-day termination clause. Standard commercial terms. You could end their business tomorrow if you chose. I felt power settling into my bones like armor. They're staging an intervention Friday night. Harrison's smile was razor thin. How delightfully ironic. It sounds more like they've called an emergency board meeting with their CEO. I want documentation, I said. Official summary of my legal positions. Something undeniable. Consider it done, he said, already making notes. I'll have everything ready by morning. Notarized, stamped, legally bulletproof. I left his office feeling like I'd traded my skin for titanium. That evening, Daphne arrived with wine and takeout. We sat on my terrace, city lights sparkling below. So, she said after we'd eaten, ready to tell me what's really happening? I told her everything. About Harrison's confirmation, about my complete control over their lives. Her eyes lit up with fierce satisfaction. Celeste. You've been holding a royal flush this entire time. I never wanted to use it, I confessed. Because you hoped love would be enough, she said gently. I understand. She stared out at the skyline. This pattern started early. Remember Marcus's 8th birthday? Vivian made that elaborate superhero cake. She gave Marcus the biggest piece with all the decorations, then handed you this pathetic corner sliver, saying Celeste doesn't mind sharing. She's so mature. The memory hit like a physical blow. A tiny slice of cake. An exclusion from family dinner. The same dismissal, just bigger stakes now. Tomorrow they'll try to destroy your character, Daphne warned. They'll call you vindictive, manipulative, heartless. They'll gaslight you into believing you're the villain. Let them try, I said quietly. When she left, she hugged me fiercely. You're not a slice of cake, Celeste, she whispered. You're the entire goddamn bakery. Never forget that. I watched her leave, feeling armored by her words. The intervention was 18 hours away. All pieces were positioned, all weapons loaded. I was ready to end this war. The drive to my parents' house Friday night felt surreal. Familiar streets, the playground where I'd scraped my knee at 6, the coffee shop where I'd celebrated my first business deal, memories from a life that no longer belonged to me. I parked on the street, not the driveway. A small declaration of independence. In my briefcase lay Harrison's documentation. It felt less like paper and more like destiny. I rang the doorbell. Theodore opened it immediately, as if he'd been lurking behind it. Celeste, he said grimly. You came. Get inside. I entered to find them arranged like a war council. Theodore commanded his leather recliner, his throne of authority. Vivian perched on the sofa's edge, tissues ready, her face painted with martyred sorrow. Beside her, Marcus and Sienna sat fused together, his arm protective around her shoulders while both glared at me with identical hostility. Completing their circle of judgment was Aunt Carol, positioned in a dining chair like a presiding judge. Her mouth was compressed into disapproval, eyes cataloging my sins. "You're late," Theodore announced. His opening attack. "I'm precisely on time," I replied, checking my watch. I remained standing, one against their seated tribunal. "Sit down, Celeste," he commanded, pointing to a lone wooden chair positioned like a defendant's dock. I sat. The chair legs scraped against hardwood. The silence that followed was suffocating, thick with years of accumulated resentment. Theodore leaned forward, hands clasped. "We're all here tonight because we love you and we're deeply concerned. Your behavior has been destructive and hurtful. You've traumatized your mother. You've endangered your brother's stability. You've shown shocking ingratitude to this family." Aunt Carol pounced immediately. "It's beyond ingratitude, Theodore. It's betrayal. Celeste's always been dramatic, but this cold cruelty. Holding money over family after everything they've given you? It's sick." Vivian delivered a perfectly timed sob. "I don't know where we failed," she whispered, shaking her head. "We gave you everything, and you destroy us over a tiny dinner misunderstanding." A tiny misunderstanding. The minimization was breathtaking. "And this poor girl," Vivian continued, gesturing at Sienna. "She's been devastated for days. She thinks you hate her. She blames herself for everything." Sienna looked down demurely, dabbing imaginary tears, innocence incarnate. Marcus tightened his grip on her. "What's wrong with you, Celeste? She's the sweetest person alive. You just can't handle my happiness, can you?" They continued their rehearsed performance, each taking turns painting me as unstable, ungrateful, heartless. I let their words wash over me like rain. They were no longer weapons, just noise. I listened silently until their accusations finally exhausted themselves. They stared at me expectantly. This was where I would crumble, apologize, restore their funding. I let the silence stretch uncomfortably. Then I breathed deeply. "Finished?" I asked quietly, my voice cutting through tension like steel. Theodore's eyes narrowed. "We're finished when you end this tantrum and start being a daughter again." "A daughter or an ATM?" I countered sharply. "Don't be insolent," he snapped. "This concerns your responsibility to family and business." "Ah," I said, something cold flickering in my expression. "Business. Perfect. I was hoping we'd discuss that." I opened my briefcase and placed a leather portfolio on the coffee table. The sound made them all flinch. "What's that? More financial nonsense?" Carol sneered. "Legal documentation," I said, eyes locked on Theodore. "Property agreements. Do you remember signing these? When I saved you from bankruptcy with strategic investments." Theodore's face hardened. "Those were family gifts. Support loans." "No," I said slowly. "They weren't. My attorney was very specific. I was young and trusting, but he was a professional protecting his client." I leaned forward, my voice dropping. "I came here tonight hoping to discuss feelings. Respect. I wanted to understand how people claiming to love me could make my presence conditional on a stranger's comfort." My voice cracked slightly, real pain breaking through. "All I ever wanted was a place at your table." I looked at each of them. "But you've made clear that discussing family is impossible. So yes, let's talk business." I extracted a document from the portfolio. Harrison's official letterhead gleamed under the lights, the notary seal dark and official at the bottom. "This is a notarized summary of our legal relationship," I said, voice now clear and emotionless. "Let me read the key section. Celeste Blackwood holds sole ownership of all properties housing family business operations, residential leases, and commercial ventures. All occupancy is subject to standard 30-day termination clauses." I paused for impact. "Sole ownership," I repeated softly. "Which means the boutique you're so proud of exists at my discretion. The homes you sleep in. The cars you drive. Everything." The silence was absolute, the sound of their world imploding. Vivian stared open-mouthed, tissue forgotten. Marcus looked between me and Theodore in confusion. Carol appeared slapped. "But Theodore." Theodore's face had gone gray. He understood. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Is it?" I pushed the document toward him. "There's your signature. The notary seal. This hasn't been your empire for years. It's mine." You've just been tenants. The word tenants shattered him. You manipulated me, he roared, lurching upright. This was all planned? A conspiracy. I stood to meet his fury, my voice glacier calm. No, Theodore. It was insurance I prayed I'd never need. I wanted to be your partner. Your daughter. But you chose differently. I surveyed their devastated faces. So as the actual owner of everything you think you control, let me make my first executive decision. This intervention is over. But our business meeting has just begun. Now let's discuss your lease agreements. Theodore's rage echoed into silence. The phrase lease agreements hung in the air like a death sentence. It was so far beyond their comprehension that they could only stare, minds reeling from the seismic shift. Lease agreements? Carol sputtered, recovering her indignation first. Theodore, she's having a breakdown. This is madness. But Theodore didn't respond. His eyes remained fixed on Harrison's documentation. The fight had drained from him, replaced by the hollow look of a dethroned king. He understood the game was over. He'd been so focused on emotional manipulation that he'd forgotten the legal cage he'd signed himself into. Sienna made the final desperate stand. Her mask of innocent victim cracked completely, revealing the calculating predator beneath. She shot to her feet, eyes blazing. This is ridiculous. She snarled. You can't just waltz in and claim ownership. We'll get lawyers. We'll fight this. I turned to her with Arctic calm. No need to raise my voice. First, I said clinically, I have the best attorneys, the ones who structured these agreements. Second, I let my gaze dismiss her entirely. Who are you exactly? You're not a Blackwood. You're not on any legal documents. You hold no equity, no standing, no voice. In this discussion, you're furniture. Your opinion is irrelevant. Color drained from her face. Her only weapon had been emotional manipulation, and I just declared that currency worthless. She looked desperately to Marcus for rescue. But Marcus sat frozen, staring at me as if seeing a stranger. The reliable sister he'd exploited for years had become something terrifying and untouchable. For the first time ever, he looked afraid of me. Carol recognized defeat. She snatched her purse with theatrical disgust. I don't need to witness this insanity, she declared, marching to the door without goodbyes. Her retreat marked the war's end. Now only broken family remained. I studied the three figures huddled on the sofa like shipwreck survivors, Theodore deflated, Vivian weeping openly, Marcus lost in bewildered fog. Let me clarify the new arrangement, I said with CEO authority. Blackwood Holdings will continue operating. The boutique stays open. Hope flickered in Vivian's eyes. You too, I continued, indicating my parents, will receive employment contracts as co-managers. Fair market wages, bi-weekly direct deposit. Performance will be monitored and evaluated. I let that settle. Personal funding ends immediately. Theodore, your truck lease terminates this month. Buy something affordable with your salary. Vivian, your credit cards are cancelled. Live within your employment income. Non-negotiable terms. Vivian's sob was strangled, desperate. I turned to Marcus. For an instant, I glimpsed the little boy I'd once protected, not the man who'd betrayed me. Marcus, I said, voice briefly softening, you have no company role. Your adult support ends today. I wish you success finding actual employment and building independent life. I collected my briefcase. The new order was established. I walked toward the door, heels clicking in stunned silence. My hand touched the handle when Vivian's broken voice called out. Celeste. Why? After everything we've given you. How could you destroy your own family? I paused, back still turned. The audacity of that question, even now, was breathtaking. I turned my head slightly. Wrong question, Vivian, I said with sad finality. The real question, how could you do what you did to your own daughter? You excluded me. You told me I wasn't wanted. You declared I wasn't family. I'm simply accepting your verdict. I opened the door and stepped into the cool night, closing it softly behind me. No slamming, the rage was gone. Only vast, clean relief remained. Walking to my car, I saw headlights flash twice down the block. Daphne? I flashed back, Silent acknowledgement that I wasn't alone in this new world. The war was finished. Rebuilding could finally begin. The weeks following the confrontation brought the strangest silence I'd ever experienced. My phone, once constantly buzzing with family demands, went completely quiet. No angry calls, no manipulative texts, no emergencies requiring my wallet. The Blackwood family, as I'd known it, had simply vanished. The emptiness was jarring, but underneath lay a peace I hadn't felt since childhood. I was finally off duty. No longer the family's financial lifeline. Just me. I honored my commitments. A week later, Harrison sent my parents official employment contracts via certified mail. Standard terms, co-manager roles, industry-appropriate salaries I'd researched thoroughly, clear responsibilities. One crucial clause required my written approval for any expenditure over $500. 5 days of silence followed. I wondered if pride would make them abandon everything. Then a crisp envelope arrived. Inside, signed contracts. No accompanying note. Pure surrender. Richard, the boutique's longtime manager I'd always respected, became my liaison. We established weekly video calls covering sales, inventory, operations. "Everything's changed here, Celeste," he reported quietly during our first call. "They're subdued. Work their shifts, go home. No more expense account lunches. No more borrowing from the register." Freed from parasitic personal expenses, the business actually became profitable for the first time. My personal liberation was intoxicating. My bank account, no longer bleeding money, began growing substantially. Impulsively, I booked a solo trip to Japan, 2 weeks just for me. Standing in ancient Kyoto temples, I felt history's weight, but it paled against the burden lifted from my shoulders. In a quiet pottery studio, I shaped clay with my hands. My bowl was amateur and uneven, but creating something purely for joy felt revolutionary. It whispered of the 18-year-old architect I'd buried. Returning home, I converted my spare room into a design studio. I bought drafting tables and software, reclaiming my abandoned dreams. Early sketches were angular and harsh, all sharp lines and cold materials. Gradually, softer elements emerged, curves, natural light, warmth. I joined a rock climbing group. Made genuine friends who knew me as Celeste, the woman with dry humor and unexpected skill at strategy games, not Celeste the family bank. I learned conversations without calculating what people might want from me. I learned to simply exist. 8 months after that decisive Friday, an unknown number called. I almost ignored it but answered. "Hello?" A tentative voice, "Celeste?" I recognized it immediately. "Marcus." "Hi," he said nervously. "I figured you blocked my old number. This is prepaid. It's all I can afford." A bitter laugh. "What do you want, Marcus?" I asked neutrally, bracing for demands. "Nothing," he said quickly. "I swear. I just needed to call." He breathed shakily. "I have jobs now. 2 of them. Warehouse stocker days, restaurant prep cook nights. It's brutal work." I listened silently. "I'm exhausted constantly," he admitted quietly. "My hands are destroyed. First time in my life I'm actually tired from working." He paused. "Sienna left 6 months ago. Once the money stopped, she called me pathetic, packed while I was working, and vanished. Took everything valuable. Including the sound system I bought you," I said automatically. "Yeah," he said with grim acceptance. "That too." I was furious initially, at her, them, you. Mostly I was terrified. I had no idea how to adult. Pay bills. Budget food. Basic survival. Long silence. When he spoke again, his voice carried unfamiliar shame. "Celeste, I understand now. Every day stacking boxes or scrubbing dishes, I think about it. You weren't just giving money, you were giving me life itself. And I never even noticed. Just took everything. I was a worthless parasite." The words came raw, unfiltered. "When you needed respect, just basic human dignity, I let my girlfriend destroy you while I stood silent. I'm sorry, Celeste. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say it." The apology I'd never expected. It didn't erase 15 years of damage, but it was something. A hairline crack in a dark wall. "Thank you for calling, Marcus," I said, my voice unexpectedly thick. "Yeah. I should go. 4 a.m. shift tomorrow." "Marcus," I said before he hung up. "Yeah? Keep working. You're building something real now. It gets easier." "Thanks, Celeste," he whispered. "You too." He disconnected. I stood in my quiet penthouse, city lights sparkling below. The family I'd known was dead forever, but something honest was growing from the ashes. Not forgiveness yet, but for the first time in years, it felt like hope. For most of my life, I measured my worth by how much I could sacrifice. I thought being a good daughter meant having no boundaries. My needs were always secondary, my dreams perpetually postponed, my bank account a family utility. I built my identity around being the reliable one, the fixer, the foundation. But foundations can be eroded, chipped away, and eventually crumble. The day my mother smiled and told me I wasn't welcome, it felt like dying. And it was, the death of the naive, people-pleasing woman I'd been for 33 years. But it was also rebirth. The painful, messy, absolutely necessary birth of who I was meant to become. Confronting my family wasn't revenge. Revenge is hot and chaotic. What I felt was cold precision. It was survival. Drawing a line and defending it with everything I had. The hardest thing I've ever done. Like amputating a limb to save the body. Part of me will always mourn the family I wished for, one that would have celebrated my architectural dreams, cheered my successes without resentment, offered me a place at their table from love, not obligation. But I've learned adulthood's cruelest lesson: you cannot make people value you. You cannot purchase respect or earn love through generosity. You can only set your own worth and refuse to offer discounts to anyone, family included. Sometimes the most loving act is walking away. Sometimes you must burn bridges, not to watch the world burn, but to use that light to navigate forward through darkness. Today, looking in the mirror, I see a woman I recognize. Not the smiling, accommodating girl from old photos. There are lines around her eyes now. She's weathered. Scarred. But her gaze is clear. Her spine straight. She owns her own life. My amateur pottery sits on my shelves, imperfect but whole. My passport holds more stamps from this past year than the previous 32 combined. The woman in the mirror is finally, truly at peace. Thank you for listening. I hope this touched you somehow. Have you ever made difficult choices to protect your peace? Share your story below. I read every comment. If this resonated, please like and subscribe for more. Take care of yourselves.